Cartoon Network has a new plan for staying afloat in the face of collapsing ratings, but if they don't do it right, the wild pivot won't save them. From the looks of it, they're doing it wrong, and the consequences just might destroy them. Cartoon Network has been sinking for years. Viewers have been driven away by awful scheduling, troubling content mismanagement, and content that is either inoffensively bland or creatively destructive, with seemingly no in-between or other option. Ratings were already down 29% in 2019 compared to 2018, and current data suggests ratings in 2020 so far are down by another 31%, deep in the 200,000s range and well below its chief rivals. Warner Media may only have one more chance to turn Cartoon Network around before ratings sink to the point where it becomes an unsalvageable loss, and we may now know where they're pinning their bets. While much of the focus in kids TV is on the main three kids networks catering primarily to audiences aged 6 to 12, there exists a somewhat separate, parallel part of the kids space that gets far less attention, but is just as complex and nuanced. The preschool TV segment. Dismissed by many as just that part of the schedule with the baby shows before 2 p.m., the preschool space, while it has dealt with many of the same problems befalling linear television as a whole as of late, has stayed fairly resilient over the years, and the likes of Disney Jr. and Nick Jr., among others, have continued to deliver a considerable pipeline of content for TV's youngest audiences. While Disney and Nick have had full-fledged separate channels for the purpose for years, and continue to maintain the daytime programming blocks said channels originated from, Cartoon Network has never been all that interested in competing in the demographic, leaving the door open for other players. Cartoon Network's lone attempt at entering the space was the short-lived Tickle You block, which mounted an unsuccessful attempt at fighting the daytime enclaves on its big three rivals for just 15 months, starting in late August 2005. Funnily, Tickle You brought Peppa Pig to our shores, though since its demise it's now become a staple of Nick Jr. On July 1st, 2020, Tom Ascheim became head of the Warner Media department that oversees Cartoon Network. His media career began when he became the first employee and general manager of Nickelodeon's Noggin channel, then a network for preteens in cooperation with Sesame Workshop in 1999. He oversaw the multiple shifts that transpired in the channel's first 8 years, including its most notable days as a preschool channel, ultimately leading him to jump ship to Sesame Workshop proper in 2007, making his way to executive vice president there in 2011 before leaving in 2013 to become the president of what was then ABC Family, guiding it through the last stages of its shift into a young adults destination with occasional family leanings, and ultimately its outright transformation into Freeform. In April 2020, he stepped down from his gig at Freeform in advance of assuming the new role overseeing the Cartoon Network department. With the history of the new head in mind, the rumor mill now has it that Cartoon Network plans to head in a decidedly more preschool direction in future, and we're already starting to see the influences come into effect. One of the most obvious was the announcement of Cartoon Network's first new preschool show in 15 years. Batwheels, currently in production at Warner Bros. Animation, which Ascheim also oversees, will follow a team of sentient, superpowered, crime-fighting vehicles defending Gotham City, as if DC Comics took Blaze and the Monster Machines to a motel room one night and the pregnancy test just came back. Or the movie franchise Cars, or The Adventures of Chuck and Friends. Take your pick. Ascheim commented bluntly on the new series and gave no doubts that CN was now in the younger ones' game. Batwheels is the perfect show to headline our new foray into preschool. But even before Batwheels, it's arguable that the groundwork was already being laid for this sort of a pivot. While they ultimately premiered on HBO Max earlier this year, Cartoon Network's Tick and Seek and The Funkies both harbored premises that were conceptually similar to things that preschool television might go for. On the channel itself, the currently running Apple and Onion and the upcoming We Baby Bears, a spin-off of previous sleeper We Bare Bears, is in a similar conceptual boat. And the reasonably popular Total Drama-Rama, while not preschool skewing in execution, fits in from an optics standpoint. I've been making the argument for a while now that Cartoon Network's content has been actively trying to lower the bar for what is acceptable kids TV, but I don't think I expected this twist in the equation. Create preschool content and try and pass it off as appropriate for the 6 to 12 set through nominal appeals to that audience. To an executive, the coverage of 2 demographic birds with 1 output stone sounds viciously ingenious. In reality, such an idea is a disaster in the making. There is a reason why preschool fare exists in a distinctly separate, parallel pillar to the core of kids TV. The kinds of things that would interest a 4-year-old are vastly different from the kinds of things that interest a 10-year-old. Heck, the entire concept of preschool content as a separate space in itself wouldn't exist if that axiom were not true. Disney and Nick invest in their junior content relatively separately from their main channel bread and butter, and beyond the continued existence of their preschool blocks when their core demographic is in school, the two streams generally do not mix. They're treated largely like oil and water. Nickelodeon learned this the hard way with the backlash in the kids space that resulted back in 2019 from daring to brand Ryan's Mystery Playdate as a Nick program in promos, and even running it during Nick airtime early on. They may have to learn that again whenever the Baby Shark preschool series arrives, in case they haven't gotten the memo yet. Much of the kids' TV audience will detect if Cartoon Network makes any sense of a hard shift towards preschool or preschool-esque programming. The mere notion of the style will likely alienate both sizable portions of the 6 to 12 demographic and older fans who have enjoyed Cartoon Network's modern output to one degree or another, furthering the ratings backslide that these moves are supposed to reverse and hurting the reputation of Cartoon Network overall, which will linger for years after the initial damage is done. This is already something CN is suffering from given their over-reliance and downright spamming of Teen Titans Go in the mid-2010s. Even though the schedule has improved since 2018, many still see CN as the channel that overplayed the divisive reboot they gallingly dubbed your new favorite show, and may not have given a chance to the likes of Mau Mau, OKKO, or Crick of the Creek. The other major implication of Cartoon Network's coming warming to preschool shows is kiss creator-fueled, story-driven shows goodbye. It's likely that Cartoon Network will lean more heavily towards strictly episodic fare in future and emphasize projects that perform better from strictly ratings or sales perspectives than things that break new or underdeveloped ground in kids' TV and animation. A buzzworthy future series among the likes of Steven Universe or Infinity Train, which captivated a wide range of audiences for its distinctive storytelling and important subject matter, may be something hopeful CN fans will have to forget about. And even something partially connected to an overarching story, like OKKO, may now be out of the question. If Cartoon Network wants to do preschool right, they have almost no choice but to silo off the nascent preschool arm from the continuing concern of 6 to 11 audience chasing. It's unclear how they can do this while giving both sides roughly equal visibility, but doing so will be a necessity. If they don't, it's plausible they won't have enough resources in that one singular department to both invest competitively in the new market they're looking to enter into, which they'll have to do from the get-go given they're going up against venerable names in Disney, Nick, and PBS, and maintain a healthy slate of new, engaging content for Cartoon Network's traditional audiences, who will still need to be continuously courted towards CN and away from alluring content elsewhere. This will ultimately lead to CN spreading themselves too thinly, not making a dent in either market, and ultimately strangling both the preschool and 6 to 11 operations, exacerbating the channel's woes overall at a point that will likely be even more precarious for them than currently. If, theoretically, CN has the resources to produce 4 shows a year, and diverts the capital for 2 of them towards preschool ambitions, that now means CN is both putting up a weak slate on the new preschool front, and now unable to do as much to maintain their existing audience, which puts them at greater risk of losing it. Unfortunately, it seems that that theory isn't a hypothetical anymore, if how Warner Media launched HBO Max is anything to go by. To bolster the new streaming service's kids and family bona fides upon its launch earlier this year, 4 series originally destined for or already running on Cartoon Network were diverted from their linear home to the new streamer. The aforementioned Tick and Seek and the Funkies, plus new installments of third-degree scheduling burn victim Summer Camp Island, and the popular anthology miniseries Infinity Train. This suggests that Cartoon Network, or its department, either isn't able or isn't willing to devote a considerable increase in resources to establishing a preschool slate separately, which means that Cartoon Network will have far less at its disposal to improve its image, secure new audiences, and save itself from ratings ruin. Given the troubling position CN is already in with regards to ratings, the consequences of an improper and failed pivot may well mean that ratings sink so low that producing any new content for CN at all would be unprofitable. When Disney XD burnt off nearly every series it had in the first half of 2017, its average ratings were roughly in the 150,000 range. Both Nicktoons and Teen Nick ended their last vestiges of anything special besides repeats, the Nick Sports Block and Teen Nick Top 10 respectively, though the former had already become reruns of game shows and crash leads by that point, around the same level in 2018. Cartoon Network is not that far above that threshold, so whatever Warner Media and Cartoon Network are planning right now needs to work. But right now, from the looks of how they're implementing it, Cartoon Network's preschool pivot won't save them. I talk more about Cartoon Network's troubles in this look at how they got to this perilous point in their ratings and relevancy up here or down the description. And for more new journeys through the world of TV just like this every single week, make sure you hit subscribe. I'm Benzie Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television, and I'll see you next time.